Torah Garden, speaking the absolute truth. Torah Nation.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Yasharal and Yehuda. We the people of the book broadcast is going down on this Shabbat. Yahuwah is called Yaakov to represent him, to guard his Shabbat. Listen, we're listening to none other than Hezekiah. Song is entitled Never Knew Yah. Listen, Hebrews. Listen, Gentiles. It's the Shabbat. We trust Yahuwah. Yahuwah, I give you praise right now in the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. I've asked you to take the reins of my lips and the reins of my tongue on this Shabbat and reign. Yahuwah, allow your word to go forth in power and might and in demonstration. Yahuwah, turning the hearts and the men, the fathers and the children to you, Yahuwah, and the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. Yahuwah, I'm trusting you to allow me to not to cause anyone to stumble, anyone to be turned out of the way, anyone to come up lame. Yahuwah, I need your witness. I need your word. I need you to speak. Yahuwah, I need the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart to be acceptable in thy sight this day, this Shabbat, going forward. In the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, I give you praise and I thank you. Hallelujah. Again, Hezekiah. It's the Shabbat. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Listen, we gonna play that again. Yeah, we gonna do that one again. I love the Shabbat.
Lord, here come a flesh. The more we get oppressed, the more we multiply.
Listen.
The more we wait to try. Too much tribulation, we gon' come alive. He gon' get us out of here.
Hallelujah.
Word in my head, I got blood on my mind. He say no place by the blood we alive. We keep these laws, we escaping that fire. Esau is falling while Jake on the ride.
We on the ride.
Then they gon' learn righteousness. We telling you chosen, nigga, why you fighting this?
We telling you you're chosen. Why you fighting this?
You the light of the world. Wake up.
You the light of the world.
They say Messiah is an idol. That idol got me running to the Father.
Got me running to the Father's laws. Yahusha Ha'Mashiach.
Casting stones at my people like I'm perfect, y'all. They sending doctors at me, but I promise.
Woo!
On the phone, talking scripts up with Mikael and Tuvi. The inside of this cup clean from go and just use. I was made up in your image, do what you want, I'm a beauty. Dry bones waking up and it ain't nothing they can do.
Yeah.
Revelation 2 and 9, Ashkenazi.
We the people of the book broadcast.
Waking up like Abba, we gon' learn too. It ain't about us, it's about you.
We rocking.
Hallelujah.
To Hezekiah, I never knew Yah. I don't own the rights to this music. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We went too far. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I never knew, yeah. I went too far. Listen. That's my Ak. Hezekiah. I love this Ak. I'll be waiting for him to drop new tracks. Listen, it's the Shabbat, it's the Shabbat, it's the day that Yahuwah gave to Yaakov. Yaakov was to be his example in the earth. Yaakov was supposed to honor his word. Yaakov was supposed to be the one that did it. Yaakov was the one that was supposed to keep Yahuwah's word, his Torah before the people, before the world. We felt miserably. We didn't know Yah. Listen, we failed miserably. He said, I don't know you either. Casted away his people. Yeah. Our ancestors, our forefathers, man, listen. We didn't keep Yahuwah's laws, statutes, and commandments. The consciousness of sin prevented us from doing it. But Yahuwah had a plan. Yahuwah's plan was Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. That was Yahuwah's plan. Yahuwah had a plan. His plan was Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. He established his plan. Yahusha. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, it's the Shabbat. It's the Shabbat, and I love the Shabbat. I had my Zoom with the people of the Basora, looking forward to going up with them and celebrating unleavened bread and immersing some and laying hands on them. She's a Ruach HaKodesh. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love Yahuwah. I love the service of Yahuwah. I love doing what Yahuwah has called me to do. I love it. Well, we going in. Now, we in the book of Romans. And Yahuwah has me in Romans, and I'm going to be in Romans until he takes me out. And I'm pretty sure he's going to have me finish up Romans. But we need to understand that as people of Yahuwah demands unity. Right? He's given us his Ruach HaKodesh of love. Right? He's given us Ruach HaKodesh of love. Let's get this. Romans 5:5. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of Elohiym is shed abroad in our hearts, right? By the Ruach HaKodesh, right? Let's go to Yuchanan 15. Yuchanan 15 says, as Yahusha prays, he says, herein is the Father glorified. Actually, he's not praying, but he was talking to him about him being the vine and the branch. Right? But because I was thinking about John 17, but this is John 15. So he says, right, my Father is glorified, right? If you abide in me, and my word abides in you. If you remain continuing in me, in Emunah, and my word in you, in Emunah, you shall ask whatever you will, and it shall be done unto you. Why? Because you have the Torah on the inside of you, and you have Yahusha on the inside of you, and you're doing what is necessary in obedience in the Ruach HaKodesh, right? If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. For here is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit. So there's a necessity of fruit bearing, right? You have to bear fruit once you're in this witness, right? You're in this witness to establish others in the witness. You're in this witness to bear fruit, to produce fruit, right? Your fruit is to remain. My hope is that the fruit that the Basora of truth produces will remain. My hope is that the fruit that comes from you having heard these YouTubes, these videos, and Yahuwah ministering something to you in your heart by the Ruach HaKodesh establishes you and has you to go forth and declare this word, share this word. That's the fruit, right? That's the fruit, right? He says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is the Father glorified, that you bear much fruit. So shall you be my disciples. Having bear fruit, you shall be my disciples. Now listen. He says, the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Continue in my love. If the Father has loved me, so have I demonstrated love to you. I've just demonstrated the Father's love. Now listen, you have to understand, Yahusha was able to demonstrate the Father's love because he had the Ruach HaKodesh without measure. He came from the Father. He was the Word made flesh. He was Torah personified, right? Yahusha Ha'Mashiach had received love in abundance by the Ruach HaKodesh, right? So Yahusha says, as the Father's loved me, he loved me because he gave me his Ruach HaKodesh. So have I loved you, continue ye in my love, right? So you will have the capacity also to continue in my love, right? Because I'm going to make sure that you have it, right? He says, listen, if you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. So love is tied to the commandments, right? The Ruach HaKodesh of love in you gives you the capacity to keep the commandments. In demonstrating the capacity to keep the commandments, we know that you're in the love of Yahuwah, right? That you love the brethren. He says, if ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. Even as I have kept the Father's commandments and abide in his love. So the love of Yahuwah, the Ruach HaKodesh shed abroad in his heart, Yahusha's, gives him, he was the Torah made flesh, but gives the capacity to keep the commandments. We, right, who because of our carnal, sinful nature, right, had to have our consciousness cleansed. And we have to receive the Ruach HaKodesh. We have to be baptized with the water and the Ruach HaKodesh. We have to receive the witness, and in receiving the witness and asking Yahuwah to give us his Ruach HaKodesh, or praying that someone receive it in Emunah by the laying on of hands. They receive the Ruach HaKodesh. The Ruach HaKodesh gives them the capacity to keep the commandments and to demonstrate love, right? He said, these things have I spoken unto you, that your joy might be, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy might be full, right? Because they were starting to feel a little choked up about the whole idea that he ain't gonna be with them no more. He's got to leave them, right? He said, this is my commandment, that you love one another. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. See, now you got to remember that disciples struggled with the whole issue of who's going to be first, who's going to be this, who's going to be that. That ruach of jealousy, all of that stuff was a part of what they were, because they were yet in their sins. They had not yet received the atonement of Yahusha's blood that purged the consciousness, receiving the Ruach HaKodesh, then later changing the whole dynamics of who they were, right? Right. So Yahusha was speaking these things based on Emunah, right? He was calling those things to be not as though they were, right? Because the disciples hadn't received the blood yet. They hadn't received the witness. They had Yahusha with them, but they hadn't been cleansed until they received Yahusha's blood. Yahusha's blood hadn't even been offered up in the Shamayim yet, right? So when we look at this, we have to understand that it's about knowing that Yahuwah's Ruach is shed abroad in our hearts, right? And it's knowing that the Ruach HaKodesh is a Ruach HaKodesh of love, right? So Romans, the 7th chapter, is where we left off, right? And that 7th chapter says, know ye not, brethren, right, that for I speak to them that know the Torah. So Paul is talking to Yahudim, right? Excuse me. Right? In that 6th chapter, again, we understand the idea is the 7th chapter is a continuation from what the 6th chapter was discussing, right? And he was talking about a lot of things that the Yahudim could understand and identify with when it comes to the Torah, when it comes to the life of Yahuwah in Yahusha, right? So we understand that in that 7th chapter, Paul is saying, know ye not, brother, that you know ye not, right? For I speak to them that know the Torah, right? Know ye not, brethren, how that the Torah has dominion over a man as long as he liveth, right? So the idea is that to Yahudim, right, the Torah has dominion over us because it was given to our ancestors, right? We can't escape it. We can't escape the Torah, right? We can't escape the consequences of the Torah, the violation of the Torah, which has brought us into the lands of our captivities. We can't escape that because Torah is with us from the day we're born to the day we die. Yahudim, those who are of the nation of the 12 tribes. It's not to the Gentiles. It's to us, right? This Torah was given to us, and it was for us to keep throughout our generations, right? From the time that our children were born until the time that we pass away, Torah was to govern everything that we do. Torah was to govern everything we did. Torah, right? So we understand that when it comes to our lives, right, it had to correspond with what was required in Torah. Right? Anything that was in opposition of Torah that we did in our life violated Torah, and it was sin. Right? But the Torah was our lives. That's why he says, as long as a man liveth, he's under dominion of the Torah. Right? Now, for I speak to them that know the law. Right? And that word know is to be intimately acquainted with, I think. Let's see, to know. Let's see what that word know is in the Greek. Gnosko.
Strong's G, 1097. Gnosko. Gnosko.
It means to learn, to know, to come to know, to get to know, to perceive, to feel, to become known. It is an idiom for a sexual encounter between a man and a woman. So it's an intimacy, right? To know on an intimate level, right? So we know as Yahudim on an intimate level that the Torah was given to us Hebrews from our birth until the day we die. We are under the obligation of Torah, right? Now, right? Torah is not our enemy any longer, right? Because Torah was our enemy only because of our sin consciousness and our nature. It wasn't that Torah was wicked or righteous. I mean, what's wicked? Torah has always been righteous. But see, our sin nature, that death part of us that was passed on from Abraham to us, right, caused the Torah to produce the sin, right, the awareness of sin, right, and because it did, we were under the obligation to have an atonement for a sin because we now have this Torah that governs our life from the time that we're born until the time we die, right? Now, he's specifying a relationship here when he goes into the second verse. He says, for a woman which haveth an husband is bound to her husband by the Torah, right? She bound by the Torah to husband, so as long as he liveth. So the union, the marital commitment that the Torah required was a commitment that was to last the entire duration of life of that woman, right, to her husband, right? So that woman was in obligation to keep that marital relationship with her husband until he died. That's the Torah, right? Torah. Now we know there's variations to the Torah, for infidelity and things like that. But we're talking specifically the union of the marriage is a marriage of union from the point in which she married her husband until the time that he dies. Right? Right? Now it says, but if the husband be dead, right, she is freed or she is loosed from that Torah that required her marriage to him until death. Once death came, she was no longer under the obligation to keeping that Torah, right, concerning her husband, because he has dead. And because he died, the strength of that Torah, that union, had no more strength or validity because she was now unmarried due to the death or the decease of her husband being deceased, right? Right? He says, so then if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she is called an adulteress. Why? Because the law stated that she was to be married until death, unless there was circumstances like infidelity. I mean, there was some things that they made allocations for. If her husband, she was no longer pleasing in the eyes of her husband, for whatever reason, he could put her away, That wasn't what Yahuwah had intended. Yahuwah had always intended in Torah for a man and a woman to coexist throughout the duration of their lives. They were to be mates forever, right? Right, but because of man's sin consciousness, because of man's carnality, right? Woman's sin consciousness and carnality, right? Yahuwah made provisions, right? He allowed for certain sets of circumstances to give way to, right? But in the fact that the marriage is a union, and in that union, the Torah requires it to be kept, right? She cannot decide to go marry someone else while her husband is still living. Because when she does, she becomes a violator of the Torah, because the Torah has her relationship to this man that she's married until he dies, right? So then, if her husband liveth and she married to another man, she's called an adulteress, right? Because in the act of being married is the act of sexual union, and that sexual union is outside now the scope of the Torah, because she's now considered an adulteress because she has left, or she has walked away from, she has turned away from the relationship she had with the husband that was to death. She's considered an adulteress, right? So let's look at that word adulteress. I mean, we know that. It's part of porneia. But what is adulteress, right? Adulteress.
Strong's G 3428. Moachalis.
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 It is an adulterate. It says, as an intimate alliance, right? It says, of Elua with the people of Yisrael was likened unto a marriage. Those who relapsed into idolatry is said to have committed adultery or played the harlot, but, right, it doesn't address the fact that it's talking about the marital relationship that is sanctioned by a law, a Torah. And if you violate that law, that relationship, that marital relationship, it is considered adultery. Actually, it's on the books of most states still is the law of adultery, or against adultery, right? So we know it's a violation of the marital relationship. It's an intimate relationship that is shared between a man and a woman. There is no adulterous relationship in a marriage between two men in the Hebrew, right? Hebrew, right? Heritage culture, Bible, CEPHER, Basora, right? Because that is not considered a marriage that is honored by Yahuwah. Yahuwah was specific in what he chose for Adam. He took a rib from him and created a woman that was suitable for him. It created the capacity to create more, to reproduce more after their kind. It was natural. Right? So the idea is adultery, right, is the violation of the marital union. The marital union that exists between a man and a woman that has been broken by the act of infidelity, right? The act of uh, of engaging in an intimate relationship outside of the law, covenant marriage that you have made with Yahusha and your spouse, right? It is not an entanglement. It's a heathen's way of minimizing the nature of their actions. There's no entanglements. You don't get entangled. You choose to commit adultery. You make a choice to have a relationship that is sexual outside of that of your marriage. Right? Yahuwah, it's not tolerated in Yahudim. And it's not tolerated in Yahudim and in Hamashiach. It ain't tolerated. So, right? So, but if her husband be dead, she is free from that Torah, so that she is no adulteress if she chooses to be married to another man. Right? Right. Let me go somewhere with this, and he's using ideas that these Hebrews that are in this Roman assembly understands. Right? Right? He says, wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the Torah. In Hamashiach. Dead to the Torah. Wherefore, my brethren, ye are also have become dead to the Torah. Right? Dead to the Torah. Now, the Torah brings consequences. Right? She is an adulteress. But there's penalties and consequences to adultery. Adultery brings consequences. The consequences. Let's do this. We going to do this. No, I don't need that. What's that? I don't know what that is. I don't need that. I don't need that. All right, so we going somewhere. We going. You know, I'm always going somewhere. We're going somewhere. Leviticus 20 and 10. Let me see. let's start at let's start at verse 1, right? This is Levitical law. This is the Torah. This is the Torah that the people that Shaul's referring to when he says in Romans 1, for I speak to them that know the law. He's speaking to Yahudim, right? Right, because they know the Torah. Leviticus 20:1 says, and where we're ultimately going is 10th verse, but I want you to understand this, right? And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, again, thou shalt say to the children of Yasharal, whosoever he be of the children of Yasharal, or of the strangers, right, that live in the midst of Yasharal, the Gentiles, that live in the midst of us, strangers of the other nations, right, that sojourn amongst Yasharal, that live amongst us, that giveth any of its seed unto Molech, right, take their sons, their daughters, and offer them up to the god Molech, right, Molech. Right, let's look at this. Right. Right. So, Molech was an idol that the children of Israel at one time, right, which caused Yahuwah to allow his vengeance to come upon them, right, because they participated in a worship of Molech, right? Now, Molech, his image is that of a half cow, right? He's most of the time seated on a throne, right? And this Molech, this El God, would take the children and they would take their children and offer them up to this El Molech, right? As an offering, right? Offer them up as an offering, right? So we have this El, right? Molech, right? Let's look at the Strong's H. Strong H.
Strong's H 4432. Molech.
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 The god of the Amorites and the Phoenicians, to whom some Israelites sacrificed their infants in the valley of Hinnom, right? So we have this wickedness, right? Yahuwah says, right? Thou shalt whosoever he of the children of Israel, of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth his seed unto Molech, he shall surely be put to death. Torah. Death. Take your child to offer him up as a sacrifice. Death. Right? And the people of the land shall stone him with stones. Death. Right? And I will set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from among the people. Cut him off from among the people. You won't be Hebrew no more. You won't be Israel no more. You won't be a stranger sojourning amongst us anymore, because he's going to cut you off. He's going to kill you. You're not going to be able to produce any more seed. You ain't producing no more seed because he's going to kill you. From among the people, because he hath given his seed to an idol, Molech, to defile his sanctuary and to profane his holy name. Right? Right? 4. And if the people of the land do any way hide their eyes from the man when he giveth his seed to Molech, and kill him not, then I shall set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut him off, and all that go a-whoring after him to commit whoredom and with Molech among their people. So you was going to kill them all. Going to cut them off. He's going to establish the verdict. The verdict is you cut off. You are to be stoned. If you try to hide it and it's found out, you and your family and everybody that's attached to the hidden lie will be cut off from among the people, right? He says, and the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits. So consulting with people who have Ruachs, right? People who take their information from demons. You know, the palm reader, right? The crystal ball person, the tarot card person. You going to them for leadership, for understanding, the horoscope people, right? Horoscope people. He said, consulting familiar spirits or wizards, or who go a-whoring, playing a whore, male prostitute, after them, going whoring after them, seeking them like you would seek a male prostitute, right? I will set my face against that soul, and I will cut him off from amongst the people. Now you got to understand that when Yahuwah said he's going to cut you off from amongst the people, he thought he's going to kill you. He's going to kill you. He's going to cut you off from among the people. He's going to kill you. He says, sanctify yourselves therefore, and be ye holy, for I am Yahuwah, your Eloah, right? Don't do this stuff, because I'm going to cut you off. You're going to be killed. You're going to die. You're going to be stoned. Listen, I'm going to cut you off, right? Right? And ye shall keep my statutes and do them, for I am Yahuwah thy Eloah that sanctify thee. He says, for every one that curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. That's Torah. Right? It's Torah. You can't curse your father or your mother. You be cut off. That's Torah. His blood shall be upon him. Yahuwah is going to judge you for you cursing your father and your mother. Right? The 10th verse, the verse that we get into. And a man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress. Man, I got this net kind of. This adulterer and this adulterer, right, shall surely be put to death. That's Torah. Right? So violation of Torah, right, is death. If a man that lieth with his father's wife haveth uncovered his father's nakedness, both of them shall surely be put to death. That's adultery. That's adultery. That's incest. Their blood shall be upon them. They shall be put to death. If a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. It's an adultery, right? They have wrought confusion. Their blood is upon them, right? Right? If a man lies with mankind as he lieth with a woman, this is Torah now, right? If a man lies with another man, see, this is my Hebraic culture, right? This is my Torah, right? This is the Torah that Yahuwah has given me to guard and to protect and to defend, right? This Torah, guard this Torah, right? From fornicators, from whoremongers, from adulterers, from effeminates, from pornea, right? Homosexuality. If a man also lies with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. What's an abomination? They have both committed an abomination, right? A disgusting thing. The Greek word, or no, the Hebrew word for this. This is Strong's blue letter. This ain't me. This is Strong's blue letter.
Strong's H 8441. To'eva.
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 They've committed to'eva, right? Something, a disgusting thing. An abomination, an abominable thing, right? It's a wicked thing, right? So, if a man also lieth with mankind, and that word lieth, so somebody won't say he's talking about telling a lie, that word lieth is
Strong's H 7901. Shachav. Shachav.
That means to lie down, to lie on, to lie as of a sexual relationship, right? To lie in sexually, right? So that we ain't talking about tell a lie. We talking about lie laying down with in a sexual way, right? So if a man lies with mankind, right? Mankind. What is mankind? Well, you know, woman is mankind, right? Right?
Strong's H 2145. Zachar.
Zahar.
Zachar.
That is male. It's a man. That's a woman. It's a male, right? So, if a man also lieth with a mankind, as is lieth with a woman, that's an adulteress thing too, but that's an abomination. That's an abomination. Both of them have committed an abomination, and they shall surely be put to death, and their blood shall be upon them, right? Death. If a woman approaches unto a beast to lie down thereunto, thou shalt kill the woman and the beast. Animal sex. And they shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. This is my Torah. This is the Torah as Paul's referencing in Romans, right? About marriage and adultery, right? Consequences. Because sin has consequences, right? And if a man shall take his sister, his father's daughter, right? Or his mother's daughter, and see her nakedness, and she see his nakedness, it is wicked thing. So he ain't even supposed to look at each other's nakedness, right? And they shall be cut off in the sight of their people, for he uncovered his sister's nakedness, and she bared his iniquity. Right? Right? That's incest. If a man lies with a woman having her sickness or her menstrual cycle, right, and shall uncover her nakedness and discover her fountain, her season, right, and having uncovered her fountain of blood, the both of them shall be cut off from among the people, right? They're going to be cut off from among the people because they violated the Torah. Somebody said, oh man, well that's a stretch. No, that's Torah. That's what we are called to obey, right? If thou shalt uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister, nor the nakedness of thy father's sister. Now, uncovering the nakedness, that means having a sexual relationship with, right? For he uncovered his near kin, they shall bear the iniquity, right? Okay, so it goes on, right? So, when we look at the relationship of the adulteress, she has a commitment and an obligation to that Torah to maintain her relationship, her integrity with the man that she's married to under the law. If she doesn't, she becomes an adulterer. She is a sinner because she has violated Torah, right? He said, now wherefore, brethren, ye also have become dead to the Torah. Right? Torah has no strength over you. Right? Why? By the body of Hamashiach, that ye should be married to another, right? The Torah is no longer you're no longer under obligation to Torah, right? Torah is not done away with. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that Torah and the consequences of Torah, right, are no longer yours because, right, because you are become dead to Torah. You are dead to Torah, right? By the body of Hamashiach, that you should be married to him, Yahusha, right? Even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto Elohiym. Listen. He's talking to Yahudim. Listen, you are no longer under the Torah that requires your obedience to Torah apart from Hamashiach. In Hamashiach, because Torah has put you to death, right? But Yahusha, through his sacrifice, has given you now life, right? And Torah is not an enemy anymore. It's an ally. Torah is something that you can keep, something that you can perform because of now having received Hamashiach, right? Who was the Torah made flesh, right? Who took the sin and nailed it to the cross, right? Yahuwah raised him up. He had the keys of death and hell, now recapturing dominion, right? Torah don't have the strength over you no more because of Hamashiach. Torah's strength was in sin consciousness, right? Sin consciousness is the strength of Torah, right? Because you know what, your consciousness is going to always cause you to sin, which strengthens Torah. Torah is at its full strength because of your sin consciousness, because of your sin nature, because if there was no Torah, there would be no sin. But Torah is strong and righteous, and you have a sin consciousness, and you are going to, by nature, violate Torah. But see, in Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, you've literally have been died to Torah, and you now free to serve Yahusha and Yahuwah. You can now produce fruit. You now have the capacity to produce fruit in Hamashiach. You are no longer limited to your carnal nature, right? That nature that caused you to sin and to violate Yahuwah's commandments, to not keep his Torah, that consciousness of sin, now has no power over you, no grip over you. Does that change Torah in you? No, it fulfills complete Torah in you. Now you can live fulfilling Torah because your heart, right, your consciousness, your heart has been replaced with a new heart of flesh. He's taken out the stony heart and replaced it with a heart of flesh, Yahusha Ha'Mashiach's witness, right, which has caused you to be able to keep the Torah. He says, listen, wherefore, my brother, ye also have become dead to the law, right? Become dead to the law, right? You're not an adulteress in violation to Torah. You're not breaking the relationship. Yahuwah and Yahusha Ha'Mashiach has made it possible to you to be free from the death that was in you, right? And receive the new life that you receive in Hamashiach, which comes with a clean conscience. Comes with the Ruach HaKodesh power, dunamos, exousia kind of life. He said, listen. Moreover, brother, for wherefore, my brother, ye also become tempted to the Torah by the body of Hamashiach, that you should be married to another. Right? Married to Hamashiach, not married to the Torah. Got to die in order to be established in the marriage with Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. You have to go down in the water in baptism. And then you have to come up to the newness of life in Hamashiach. Right? You have to pass from death to life. In Hamashiach you cross over. You cross over from the consequences of Torah. Death. Eternal death. Consciousness of sin. Right? That ye should be married to another, Hamashiach. To him who is raised from the dead, Hamashiach. That you should bring forth fruit. Because listen, you ain't producing no fruit if you haven't received the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. Right? You're still an adulteress under the Torah. You're still an adulteress under the Torah. You still have violated Yahuwah's Torah. Right? You have to be restored in blood. Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sin. You have to have the blood that comes through ceremonial cleansing. It's a symbol of the water, right? It is the sprinkling of water, clean water. It's Yahusha said being born again of the water and of the Ruach HaKodesh. It is a baptism, right? Going down as a dirty, filthy, dead individual and being raised up as a clean, alive individual. In Emunah, having received the blood of atonement, right, that Yahusha has made available, and then receiving the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the keeper of you, the comforter, the power, the exousia, that which comes with signs following. That's the good works. That's the fruit. You got to produce fruit. He says, for when we were in the flesh, right? We were in the flesh. When we were in the flesh. Now listen, don't make it more complicated than it is. We still in the flesh, right? But we were dead in our carnal nature, which was our fleshly nature. Right? That's the carnal nature. Right? That's the fleshly nature. Right? when we were in the flesh, right? We were dead in our trespasses and sins. We were dead because death reigned from Adam to Moshe, and it reigned up until Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. Death reigned, right? The sin nature reigned. Your flesh dictated to you. You received a Torah that judged you, that made what you did that much more wicked and gave that much more accountability, which required that much more sacrificing. You were dead. Your flesh, the things that you did in your flesh reflected sin. Listen, I read to you the things that Yahuwah said that we weren't to do in Leviticus, right? Right? I read them, right? It says everything from offering your children to Molech, to consulting familiar spirits and witches and warlocks, to cursing your father and your mother, committing adultery with your neighbor's wife, to uncovering your father's nakedness, sleeping with your father's wife, your daughter-in-laws, the wife of your mother, the man that takes a wife of his mother, wickednesses. Listen. All of these things brought death. All of these things were the motions of sin in our lives. Listen. He says, a man taking his sister, his father's daughter, and sleeping with her, uncovering in their nakednesses. He says, listen. He says, a man who lies with a woman having her menstrual cycle, right? It's uncleanness, right? He says, uncovering the nakedness of thy father's sister, right? Your kin, it's iniquitous. He says, a man who lieth with his uncle's wife and uncovers her nakedness shall bear his sin. Listen, he says, man who sleeps with a man like he sleeps with a woman. Come on, listen. It's wickedness. Listen. It's wickedness, right? It's wherefore. Where was it? He said, for when we were in the flesh, the motion of sin, which by the law did work in our members to bring forth fruits unto death, right? That's what it did. You gotta understand. The Torah did its job. There's nothing unrighteous concerning the Torah. The Torah is all righteous in and of itself. All by itself, the Torah is righteous. There's nothing wicked. There's nothing wrong with the Torah. The sin is in you because of your sin consciousness, because of your sin nature, because your failure to keep Torah, right? It's all on you, right? But Yahusha has freed you. He's giving you the process of reconciliation in Emunah, the steps that you need to take. It's Emunah. He says, for when we were in the flesh, the motions of sin which were by the Torah, right? Because the Torah revealed sin, right? Did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. Listen. Where's it at? Deuteronomy 31. Deuteronomy 31. Let's go to Deuteronomy 31. What did Yahusha say concerning Moshe? He said in 31:16, and Yahuwah said unto Moshe, behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, but this people will rise up and go a-whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, Molech. Whither they go to be amongst them, and they will forsake me and break my covenant which I made with them, the Torah. And my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them. He will cast us away. Right? And I will hide my face from them. He's going to let the nations run havoc on us without any intervention. Right? And they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. Hence, it's what we experience. The transatlantic slave trade, right? The Spanish Inquisition, Titus Vespasian, all of it, right? All of it. Constantine, all of it. Right? Right? I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them, that they shall say in that day, we are not, saying that they are not, these evils come upon us because our Lua is not with us. He said, I will surely hide my face in the day for all the evils which they shall have wrought, and they have turned unto other elves. And what came along with these other elves, right? The worship of their gods and their sexual perversions, their sexual sin. Excuse me. He says, for the motion of sin, which were by the Torah, did work in our members to bring forth fruits of death. Now he's talking to the Yahudim, right? He's talking to the Yahudim. He says, for I speak to them that know the Torah, right? This is to the Yahudim, right? Because you got Jews and Gentiles both in this assembly. If I'm speaking to the Gentile, to the Yahudim. You know we violated the Torah. You know we violated the Torah. Yahuwah said in Ezekiel, he says, 23, I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which ye have profaned in the midst of them. It was profaned amongst the heathen, but you profaned it first in the midst of them. Yahuwah said that we, Hebrews, profaned his name. How do we do it? By not keeping his Torah. In the beginning of the verse, they come to the prophet inquiring. And Yahuwah will be like, you going to inquire of me? What you mean you going to inquire of me? You going to ask me questions, you wicked fathers, Hebrews. Listen, Romans. You did it. And it brought death. Right? The actual sin that was passed on through Abraham to Moshe and unto us continued until we became quickened, until we became made alive, till we became witnesses of the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. We released our emunah in Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, the Son of Yahuwah, the Torah made flesh, the word of Yahuwah. We received it in emunah. We were born again of the water and of the Ruach HaKodesh. We are established now. We no longer are we no longer have the sin that worked by the law that brought fruit unto death. We don't do that no more because we've been made free through Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, right? But now we are delivered. Listen, we're delivered from the Torah, the consequences of the Torah. We're delivered from the consequences of the Torah. We ain't delivered from keeping the Torah. We're delivered from the consequences of sin that came as a result of Torah. The Torah is righteous. Torah ain't never going anywhere. But we are delivered from the law for being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in the newness of the Ruach HaKodesh. and not in the oldness of the letter. See, the Ruach HaKodesh is what leads us and guides us into the truth, right? It reveals Torah. It gives us the capacity to keep Torah. The Ruach HaKodesh is the word of Yahuwah. It is Yahuwah and Yahusha. They're all one. Listen, when we have the Ruach HaKodesh, we have Yahuwah and Yahusha. We have the word on the inside of us, and we have the Father on the inside of us. We have the Ruach HaKodesh. Listen, understand the revelation of the Ruach HaKodesh. The Ruach HaKodesh is the awesomeness of Torah on the inside of us. The Ruach HaKodesh was that word which was spoken that came to pass. Why do you think whatsoever things we shall say by the Ruach HaKodesh when we speak them? Whatsoever things we say we shall have when we speak it in Emunah, because the Ruach HaKodesh is the word made flesh. The Ruach HaKodesh is Yahusha's word in us. The Ruach HaKodesh is the Father in us. The Ruach HaKodesh is Torah in us, right? The death that comes through sin consciousness no longer operates in us in the Ruach HaKodesh. So we keep Torah. Torah is not an enemy. It's an ally. Torah has always been an ally. But you know what? It was an enemy because we could not keep it. And it revealed our sin. He says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Eloah forbid. Eloah forbid. Is the law sin? No. Nay, I have not known sin but by the law. For I had not known lust, except the law said, thou shalt not covet. The law ain't sin. Sin is sin. Sin is a violation of the law. The law is not evil. Sin in you, consciousness, is evil. The sin consciousness in you is evil. The sin consciousness in you is evil, right? That's why Yahusha had to come to remove this evilness from you. He had to, in order to establish you in his kingdom. Because you can't even be in the kingdom, Yahuwah, if you have sin. He's not going to tolerate it. He won't tolerate sin in his kingdom, right? So, So, right? He said, Eloah forbid. Nay, no. I had not known sin, but by the law. Because the law was given to reveal sin. Because before there was no law, there was no consequences to sin. Sin, the wages of sin is death, right? Every man was going to die. Every man who was under Adam was the walking dead. Walking dead. You're the walking dead. You were dead in your trespasses and sin. You're walking dead, right? You're walking dead before the Torah. You're walking dead as a result of the Torah. The Torah just made it perfectly plain and clear, cut and concise. You were the dead man walking. Torah made it plain. You was a dead man walking. Yo, I give you praise. He said, listen, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Eloah forbid. Nay, I had not known sin but by the law. For I had not known lust except the Torah had said, thou shalt not covet. But sin, right, consciousness, taking occasion by the commandments. The commandments took the honor of revealing my sin. Making my sin dishonor. Yeah, that's right. But sin, taking occasion by the commandments, wrought in me a manner of conspicuousness. What's that word conspicuousness means?
Strong's G, 1939. Epithumia. Epithumia.
Epithumia, right? It means desires, cravings, longings, desiring what is forbidden. Lust, right? So, right, he says, for I had not known lust except the Torah had said, thou shalt not covet. But sin, taking occasion by the commandments, wrought in me all manner of lust, depravity, right? For without the Torah, sin was dead. For without the Torah, sin was dead. Without Yahuwah's Torah, sin was dead. Right? Sin wasn't living. It wasn't alive. It was dead. It was unnoticed. It went unnoticed. When the law made sin noticeable. Without the law, it was dead because no one took notice that it was a violation. Yahuwah always knew it was a violation. But you always didn't know it was a violation. So Yahuwah established a Torah so that you would constantly know his judgment and what is acceptable and what is not. Right? That's Yahuwah, right? He says, for without the law, sin is dead, right? He says, for I was alive without the law once, right? He was. But when the commandments came, sin revived, and I died. Right? I was alive once without the Torah. Right? I was alive. Right? Now he ain't talking about alive as in Hamashiach's life, the new life. He's talking about he was alive to the fact that, he was doing what he was doing, and it was sin. He says, but, right? He says, but the commandments revive sin. I was alive, but once the Torah came, and I recognized and was taught Torah, and I understood Torah, and I had an obligation to keep Torah, right? Sin revived, and I died. I was dead to sin. Oh, listen, you don't hear me. For sin taking occasion by the commandments, this is Paul. Now, this is the dichotomy. This is what happens, right? This is a picture of how, it's the picture of the evolution of sin's nature as a consciousness, right? How you, even as a child, growing up doing things, not understanding the full scope of what's right and wrong, right? When you become aware of Torah, right, because your parents teach you Torah, you begin to understand the right and the wrong. You're in an environment with people that for the most part, may always or may not always, as children, keep Torah. But you, right, as a child, right, you're brought up and you understand what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And when you begin to understand, right, that what you did is a violation or you broke the rules, you understand now that there is a consequence because what you did was wrong. It's sin. It became alive in Paul because he recognized the Torah and what the Torah was saying in reference to how he was living or how he was conducting his life. And it was indicative of sin. That's what it was. He said the commandments. Commandments. He says, for I was alive without the Torah, right? Once. But when the commandments came, sin revived. It wasn't even that sin was always there. But the revived element means that it became something that I was aware of. Okay, I'm aware of it now because this is what the Torah says, right? He says, and I died. Yeah, I am now under sin. I bear the penalty of death. I need a sacrifice every year. When I violate Torah, I have to go to the judges and they have to work it out, or I may have to go to the high priest to have him to deliberate and determine whether or not I need to offer a sacrifice for the violation. Because now sin is revived and I'm dead. And the commandment which was ordained unto life, right? Because the Torah is life. And the Torah is life, right? Until you violate it. Then it becomes death to you. Because the consequences, the wages of sin is death. The wages of violating Torah is death. I have found to be unto death. Yeah, this Torah that I violated is unto death. Right? He says, for sin taking occasion by the commandments, right, deceived me. Listen, your sin nature runs you. It deceives you. It deceives you to believing because of this self-talk that you get yourself into. It deceives you into thinking that it's okay for you to fornicate. It's okay for you to steal. It's okay for you to commit adultery. It justifies you. It takes occasion. For sin taking occasion by the commandments deceived me, and I by it slew me. Kills me. The wages of sin is death. I'm destined to death. Physical death, spiritual death, and eternal death. Excuse me. Right? So sin taking occasion, it took an opportunity by the commandments. It deceived me. It used self-talk. Hasatan planted the seed. I entertained that seed in sin consciousness. And I yielded to what that consciousness told me to do. But in yielding, I violated the Torah. Right? And by it, slew me. The wages, the consequences that come from Torah is death. Right? Wherefore, the Torah is holy. The Torah is holy. And the commandments are holy. Right? And just and good. See, it's that sin consciousness that I got from Adam. That passed from Adam to Moshe unto me until I received the witness. You gotta receive this witness, man. You gotta receive this one woman of you, man of you. You gotta receive this witness. This witness is everything. This witness is everything. He said, because it's good. The Torah is holy. Kodesh. The commandments are Kodesh. They're just. They're good. How can a young man cleanse his ways? By taking heed, listening to, obeying Torah, and not getting deceived by self-talk, sin, convincing you to do what is against what the Torah says. So listen, when was then that which is good made death unto me? No. The Torah didn't make me die. I made me die. Listen, Torah didn't make me die. He says, was then that which is good, the Torah, made death unto me? The Lord forbid. But sin, that it might appear sin, working death in me by that which is good, the Torah, right? That sin by the commandments might become exceedingly sinful. Listen, the commandments are good, they're just, they're holy, but their purpose is to show you how wrong you are. It doesn't make the Torah bad, it makes you in sin bad. But sin, that it might appear sin, working death in me by that which is good, the Torah. That's why Yahuwah has given the Torah. That's why he has given the commandments, right? So you must understand that in order to be reestablished as the people of Yahuwah, you must turn to Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, who's the only way to establish you and cause you to keep the commandments. You have to have the sacrifice. You can't do it without the sacrifice. Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sin. You got to be born again of the water and the Ruach HaKodesh. You have to receive the blood in atonement. There has to be an atonement for sin. You can't turn to Yahuwah without an atonement offering. You can't. You can't turn to Yahuwah without atonement offering, without a sprinkling of blood and water. You can't. He said, was then that which is good made death unto me? No. Torah didn't make you die. Right? He Lord forbid, but sin that it might appear sin, working death in me by that which is good, the Torah, that sin may become, so that sin by the commandments might become exceedingly sinful, so that we may know what it looked like. Somebody says, what is sin? It's a transgression of the Torah. What's the Torah? Torah is the commandments that Yahuwah has issued to the nation of Yasharal and Yahudah. He gave them to us. Right? He gave the Torah to us. Right? Sin is a concept that Yahuwah gave to us as Yahudim. Right? I take that back. Sin was passed on to all mankind. He gave the Torah to us so that we would understand what sin looked like, right? And to show what sin was. He has chosen Yaakov to give his Torah oracles to. He didn't give them to the world. He didn't give them to the Gentile nations. And even when Titus Vespasian came in and took it, and Constantine took it and established Christianity, right? And put that God spell throughout the four corners of the earth, right? Bruising the heel of Hamashiach, right? Intending to infiltrate this profane, this blasphemy, this profanity amongst the people. Yeah, that's what he did, right? The Torah was designed to reveal all that, to make sin exceedingly sinful. He says the commandments might become exceedingly sinful, right? He says, for we know that the Torah is spiritual because Yahuwah gave it. Everything about the Torah intense, everything about the Torah's characteristics are attached to Yahusha and the Ruach HaKodesh and this Yahusha, Yahuwah, and the Ruach HaKodesh. It's spiritual. It's the word of Yahuwah, right? The Torah, right? He said, but I am carnal, sold under sin, because of Adam. Because of the one act of disobedience, Adam caused sin to pass on all mankind, right? So I am naturally under sin. Yahuwah gave us a righteous Torah when we were naturally under sin, so that we wouldn't know we were sinful, right? And I was sold under sin. I was. It was a wrap. Adam made that possible. He sold us under sin, right? For that which I do, I allow not. Now, Paul is not talking about himself in the reconciled state. He's not talking about Shaul as a reconciled individual. When Paul starts to personalize, he's drawing reference to who he was before he was reconciled, or he had the ministry of reconciliation through faith in the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach being freed from sin consciousness, being purged from sin, from being a new man, a new creature, being quickened, made alive. He's talking about him before this, right? So when he says, for that which I do, I allow not, he's talking about his nature. His carnal, sinful, fleshly nature that's going to do what it wants to do. I don't always want to not do a thing, but I do it anyway. He says, listen, for that which I do, I allow not. But what I would, that I do not. But what I hate, that I do. This is not Paul. This is not the Paul that is in the witness. This is not the Shaul that is in reconciliation. This is the Shaul that knows that the Torah has revealed to him his sin, and he now knows what that looks like. And he knows that, in sin, I don't do what I need to do, and I don't do like I should do, and the thing that I really want to do, I don't do it. Why? Because of sin, right? He says, if then I do that which I would not, I consent that the law, that it is good. So if I do that which I would not, right? What you would not do is what the Torah says not to do. But if I do it, then I just prove that the Torah is good. I prove that the Torah is good by virtue of me not obeying the Torah, right? Knowing that the Torah is the right thing to do, then I prove by my disobedience that Torah is good. The Besor, the Torah is good, right? He says, now then, it is no more I that doeth it, but sin that dwelleth in me, right? You know, there used to be a show called the Flip Wilson Show, right? And you know, you got to be old as me or older to understand the Flip Wilson Show. But Flip Wilson was a black comedian. He had his own syndicated TV show, which was really unusual. But he was one of them black comedians that would dress up as a woman, right? You have on a dress and the bonnet and the hat, who dressed up like a woman. You know, he was a comedian. He did comedy, sitcom, but he always, in every show, he had to dress up as a black woman. Or dress up as a black woman in a dress, right? Which is something that they expect all the comedians to do, to dress up like a woman. And you know, it's a way to demean the black man, you know. You don't need to put me in no dress. I ain't satisfying your craving desire to demean me. But anyway, that's just, I'm just going off on a little bit right there. You will forgive me, I'll bring me in. Listen, but the idea is that he used to have an expression, say, the devil made me do it. Girl, the devil made me do it. Right? The devil made him do it, right? Shaul is saying, listen, he says, But now then I know it is, now then it is no more I that doeth, but the sin that dwells in me. The sin that is a result of the disobedience that's motivated by Hasatan, who has caused you to continue to this self-talk of carnality, of giving into the thoughts that are constantly sowed as seed, and you do them knowing that you shouldn't, but you do them anyway because the devil made you do it. He used to say, the devil made me do it. Yeah, Flip Wilson. Let me see. I'm going to do some. Let me see something. I know I can find them on YouTube. I think her name was Geraldine. Flip Wilson, yeah. Let me see what we got here. Yeah, here we go one. I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna play this. That's a Flip Wilson, right?
Welcome to This Is Your Life.
This is your life.
Somewhere in our audience is the person we're about to honor, one whose spirit of independence and fearless honesty has earned the respect and admiration of everyone. Yes, tonight, this is
Flip
your
Wilson,
life.
Geraldine.
Geraldine Jones.
Geraldine Jones. The black man got a bob hairstyle, dressed up as a woman, lipstick on.
This is too much.
Yeah, well, come on now.
Don't touch me. Don't you touch me, Ralph. You don't know me that well. You haven't been in my life but 2 minutes, honey.
Geraldine,
Oh.
I'm Ralph Edwards.
I don't care if you Prince Edwards. Just say, Geraldine, will you join me on the stage where we have your check?
All right, Geraldine, I'll say, will you join me on the stage? I don't know
Yes,
if we got
Ralph,
the
I
check.
will.
All right, just go right ahead.
Don't walk behind me, Ralph.
Right up there.
This is too much. What a surprise. I'm going after you, Ralph, we're equal, right?
Very unusual, a man following the... Oh, I want to tell you, we just want to tell everybody about your life. It's all in here. I tell you everything you've done.
Everything?
Everything.
Ralph, if you tell him everything tomorrow, this place is going to be a bowling alley.
You have nothing to worry about, believe me.
Don't touch me, Ralph, please. That's a very sensitive shoulder blade. Don't mess with my life, Ralph.
Your life is a shining example of the American working girl.
Honey, hush. Can I hear it one time for the working girls?
You know?
Right on.
All right, that's enough of that. So the idea is that he was this black comedian. His name was Flip Wilson. And his expression was, the devil made me do it. He used to say that, don't touch me too. He was... but anyway, back to Romans. So we understand, right, that it's the sin Shaul was referring to that was in him that did the work. The sin that was in him that did the work, right? He says, for I know that in me that is in my flesh. Now again, we're not talking about just the flesh in that he's talking about his physical flesh, but he's talking about in his carnal nature. In his carnal nature, in his dead state, because he is dead. Stinkishly dead. He is dead, and right? It's what he's saying is what it's in Ephesians, the 2nd chapter. He says, and you have he quickened who were dead in your trespasses and sins, where in times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the Ruach that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So Hasatan's Ruach was in him. It was his motivation. It was the spirit that revealed that Ruach, that evil Ruach that drove him to do what he did. He says, for among whom also we all had our conversations. We lived in times past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, even as others. We were by nature children of wrath, but it was because of the Ruachs, right, that worked in us, right? So he says here, knowing that in my flesh, right, knowing that in me, that is my flesh, dwelleth no good thing, right, because you're dead, right? For to will is present with me, but to perform that which is good, I find not. Why? Because there's this evil Ruach that is driving you to do what your sin nature dictates. It's what motivates your sin consciousness to keep you doing those sinful things, right? He says, for the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do, because you are by nature a child of wrath, because Hasatan is your father. The Ruach of Hasatan dictates what you do, right? He says, for to do good, for the good I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. He says, now if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but it's a sin that dwelleth in me, right? Yes, you are by the very nature of you a child of wrath. Everything you do is dictated to you by the evil Ruachs, because he is your father. You're going to do what your father says to do. He says, listen, I find then a Torah that when I would do good, right, evil is present. Why? Yeah, because the Torah is going to always show you you're wrong, right? Right? For I delight in the Torah of Elohiym after the inner man, right? But I see another law in my members warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into the captivity of the law of sin, which is in my members. This is the way an unregenerate man who has not been reconciled to Yahusha Ha'Mashiach thinks. This is how they think. You know, you should have people, man, look, I just can't do it, man. You know, I can't do it. Some stuff I know that it's right, but I just can't do it because I know me. That's what I had people to tell me that. You know, you can do that, man, but I can't do that because I know me. You know, I know what I'm gonna do, right? But I see a law in my members warring against the law in my mind. I know something telling me I know it ain't right, and I know I shouldn't do it. But you know, I just, you know, when it come down to it, I always yield. I always give in to the conversation, the war in my mind. Right? The self-talk that I get that constantly comes into me and bombards me. That's Hasatan. That's Hasatan's job. His job is to keep you attached to this death, right? He says, warring against the law of my mind, the Torah, the truth, the things that I know, that I have learned, right? But I'm not keeping, that I'm not doing because I haven't been reconciled. He says, they bring me into captivity, right? Captivity into the law of sin, which is in my members. So it brings me captive to the sin, right? Thus the law, to the law of sin. Not that sin, that the law is sin. But it brings me and makes me captive to what the law has demonstrated as wrong in me, and this sin is going to hold me captive. Right? He says, the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members, right? And he says, oh, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of death? Now listen, right? This is the same thing, right, that the 3,000 souls that were added to the assembly said, in a manner of speaking, after having received the preached word of Shaul and having heard the word in the Ruach HaKodesh, because you know everybody was speaking in tongues, and everybody was singing them in their own language, and Peter was probably the only, well, people were speaking Hebrew, but he was the one that claimed man and brother, and everybody else, they all had the same thing, because they all had the same thing to say, men and brother and what, right? But the idea is that they heard the preached Torah of truth and had emunah because they were convicted, because it revealed who they were. It was them saying, we are wretched men. Who shall deliver us? What must we do to be saved? Who shall deliver me from this body of death? What must we do to receive Yeshua? What must we do to have this change? He says, I thank Elohiym through Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, our Adonai, so then that with the mind I myself serve the Torah of Elohiym, but in my flesh the law of sin. So what he's saying is that I thank Yahuwah. Repent of your sins. Receive the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. Be baptized. And receive the Ruach HaKodesh, the witness of Yahuwah, which is going to establish you, which is going to establish you, which is going to establish you, which is going to quicken you, right? Which is going to change the way you think, right? Even when you were dead in your trespasses and sins, he gave you life together in Hamashiach. Ephesians 5 and 6, and has raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Hamashiach, right? That in the age to come he may shew forth exceeding greatness of his riches towards us in the kindness through Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. For by grace are ye saved through faith. So you have to have faith in the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, because that's the grace. That's the undeserved favor. Yahuwah sent Yahusha not because you deserved it, but because he loved you. And because he loved you, he gave Yahusha as the witness. So, Romans. O wretched man, who that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. Be born again of the water and of the Ruach HaKodesh. Confess your sins. Yahusha's blood cleanses you from sin. And receive the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh. That's it, man. That's it, bro. That's it. That's all I got. That's it. There's a conflict between two natures, right? But listen, I'm going to tell you something. In the witness of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, that second nature is under the subjection. You don't have a body of sin no more. You don't have a body of sin no more, right? You don't have the body of sin no more, because you know what? We go to the 8th chapter, the 1st verse. He said, well, let's look at this real quick. He said, 7th chapter, the 6th verse, or the 23rd verse. He says, "O wretched man that I am," the 24th verse, "who shall deliver me from this body of this death? I thank Yahuwah, through Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, our Adonai," right? So then with the mind I serve the law of Elohiym, but in the flesh a law of sin. Now listen. He goes on and says, look, there is therefore now no condemnation for us, right? To us who are in Hamashiach, right? Who walk not after the flesh. We're not after the flesh no more, but after the Ruach HaKodesh, right? For the law of the spirit of the Ruach HaKodesh of life that is in Hamashiach has made us free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, Elohiym sending his son, his own son, his only begotten son, in the likeness of sinful flesh, as an offering for sin, condemns sin in the flesh. Sent his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemns sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of Torah might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Ruach HaKodesh. That's how you are freed from sin. Because you walk after the Ruach HaKodesh. This witness is designed to be established in Yahusha's blood, the water, and the Ruach HaKodesh. You have to walk after the Ruach HaKodesh. That's the only way to elevate yourself, your mind continually over the bombardments of your thoughts, that the word, the washing of the water of the word is designed to help filtrate the whole devotion that you have in prayer and fasting and the word and the Basora, the Torah of truth, plus the Ruach HaKodesh is going to lead you and to guide you to all truth. When the enemy wants to send something into you, the Ruach HaKodesh say, oh, no, pump the brakes, that ain't right. Deal with it. You have to, because that's what this witness is about. Listen, man of Yah, woman of Yah, the Shabbat lesson has gone forth. We went through the entire chapter of the 7th chapter of Ephesians, and listen, the entire chapter of Romans, and we did go into Ephesians, but the idea is that, we're united in Hamashiach. We're one in Hamashiach. Yahusha's witness has caused us to walk in this newness. His witness has caused us to walk in righteousness. His witness has caused us to walk in the blessings of Yahuwah. Like we are established in him. And we have to hold that. We have to maintain that. We have to trust Yahuwah in that. And we have to know that he is everything we need. He has provided us everything we need. We have everything we need in him. So listen, We the People of the Book broadcast is going down. It's going down. It is. And you know what? We trust Yahuwah in his word.
Band stereo, power on.
We trust Yahuwah in his word.
Both connected.
And we're calling it a day.
The more we get oppressed, the more we multiply. The more we multiply, the more we wake the tribe. Too much tribulation, we gon' come alive. He gon' get us out.
None other than Hezekiah. Song is entitled Never. The song is entitled Never Knew Yah. Listen, you got to receive this witness. Righteousness is in Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, not the law. The law is righteous. The law is just. You are in sin if you don't have the witness. We are the people of Yahuwah. Yahuwah, I pray right now in the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, the word that you have given me, I have given to them. I'm praying that they would keep them in the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. I pray that they would keep them in the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. Let your witness go forth in power and in might. At the sound of the shofar, Yahuwah, in the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach. I thank you for your word. I thank you for your Shabbat. I thank you that you've given it to your people. I give you praise for all that you do. In the name of Yahusha Ha'Mashiach, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Yahuwah, my strength and my redeemer. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, called to greatness. Woman of Yahuwah, beautifully and wonderfully made. The Shabbat is gone down. We the People of the Book broadcast is gone down. We rested in Yahuwah. With that, I say, man of Yah, woman of Yah, shalom. 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 Be blessed.
Torah Garden, speaking the absolute truth. Torah Nation.